Have you ever had someone in your life vanish without explanation? One day they were present, kind, and deeply connected, then, suddenly, they were gone. No fight, no closure, no long goodbye. For many, this sudden disappearance feels like betrayal. But for those who carry the soul of an empath, leaving without warning isn't an act of cruelty. It's a matter of survival. Empaths are wired differently. They don't just listen to words or notice moods, they absorb them. The pain, anger, joy, and shadows of others move through their system as if those emotions were their own. Over time, this sensitivity becomes both a gift and a burden. When the weight grows too heavy, empaths don't usually argue, explain, or negotiate. They leave, abruptly and often permanently. Carl Jung's psychology gives us a language to understand why this happens. Jung's concepts of archetypes, the collective unconscious, the shadow, and individuation shine light on the empath's sudden vanishing act. Through his lens, we see that the empath's disappearance isn't a mystery or a betrayal but a predictable, and even necessary, step in their psychic survival. Let's unpack why empaths leave without warning, and why once they walk away, they rarely, if ever, return. 1. Defining the empath. An empath is more than a kind or compassionate person. Empathy itself is the ability to understand and share another's feelings, but being an empath means experiencing those feelings as if they were one's own. Unlike sympathy, which maintains distance, or standard empathy, which allows recognition without absorption, the empath's boundary is porous. The sadness of a friend can linger in their chest for days. The unspoken anger of a partner can settle into their stomach like a knot. In modern psychology, empaths are often described as emotionally intuitive, highly sensitive people who process the world through a heightened emotional lens. They pick up on subtle cues, tone of voice, micro-expressions, body language that most others overlook. But Jung's psychology offers a deeper framing. The empath aligns with archetypes like the wounded healer, who transforms their own pain into healing for others, and the anima animus, which represents our capacity to connect with the soul of the opposite. This archetypal connection makes the empath not just a personality type but a symbolic figure. Empaths hold a role in the collective unconscious. They carry, mirror, and metabolize emotions for others. They are bridges between the visible and invisible, the conscious and unconscious. But carrying that role comes at a cost. Because empaths are open channels, they are also more vulnerable to psychic invasion, projection, and burnout. 2. Jung's psychology and the empath's inner world. Jung believed the psyche is far more than personal thoughts and feelings. It is a vast field containing both the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious holds archetypes, universal symbols and patterns that shape human behavior. For empaths, these archetypal forces are not abstract, they are lived realities. They feel them moving through people, through environments, sometimes even through silence. This sensitivity means that empaths often live with a heightened sense of permeability. They don't simply interact with others on a surface level, they absorb the moods, shadows, and unspoken stories of those around them. Jung spoke of that participation mystique, a psychic condition where boundaries between self and other dissolve. For the empath, participation mystique is not rare, it's daily life. The empath's inner world, therefore, is rarely still. It is a constant tide of feelings, intuitions, and impressions, many of which don't even belong to them. While others might unconsciously project their emotions outward, the empath receives and internalizes those projections. They live at the edge of Jung's world of symbols, where personal identity blurs with collective patterns. This makes them healers, intuitives, and artists, but also makes their psyche fragile and prone to overload. 3. The shadow and why empaths attract toxicity. Jung's concept of the shadow is central to understanding why empaths often find themselves entangled with toxic people. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or disown. Because it is intolerable to face, we unconsciously project it onto others. For instance, someone unwilling to face their own anger may accuse others of being aggressive. Someone repressing their selfishness may call others self-centered. Empaths, with their open psychic field, become natural containers for these projections. Toxic individuals, often unconsciously, sense that the empath will absorb their disowned qualities. The empath becomes the scapegoat, the mirror, or the emotional sponge. They begin to feel emotions that do not originate within them but are thrust upon them by others' shadows. This dynamic is exhausting and dangerous. Over time, the empath's identity blurs. They may feel responsible for others' moods, guilty for others' unhappiness, or pressure to fix what is broken. Jung warned that encountering the shadow is unavoidable in individuation, but for empaths, it can become a daily burden. The weight of carrying not only their own unconscious but the unconscious of others creates a psychic overload that eventually reaches a breaking point. The breaking point: why empaths leave suddenly. Empaths rarely leave gradually. When the overload becomes unbearable, departure happens abruptly, without prolonged discussion or closure. To outsiders, this may look like impulsivity or betrayal, but to the empath, it is survival. Their psyche, overstimulated and saturated with projections, simply cannot hold any more. This sudden departure is similar to a psychic fight-or-flight response. Just as the body protects itself from physical harm, the psyche protects itself from psychic collapse. Jung emphasized that when the psyche becomes unbalanced, it creates compensatory movements to restore equilibrium. For the empath, this compensation is withdrawal, silence, or disappearance. It's important to recognize that empaths often don't plan these exits. They reach a point where their nervous system and unconscious say, "Enough." Words no longer suffice, boundaries no longer hold, and negotiation is impossible. Leaving without warning is the psyche's emergency exit, a way of preserving the self when all other options have failed. 5. The archetype of the wanderer. In myth and story, the figure of the wanderer appears across cultures: the healer who departs, the wise one who retreats to the mountains, the traveler who leaves the village in search of truth. Empaths often embody this archetype. Their sudden departure is not a sign of weakness but of alignment with an ancient pattern. The wanderer archetype reflects the need to break away from environments that poison the soul. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, requires a period of separation from the collective. For empaths, this separation is both archetypal and personal. They leave because the environment no longer allows them to individuate. Seen in this light, the empath's sudden departure is not betrayal but initiation. Like the wanderer, they step into the unknown to preserve their wholeness. They do not leave because they don't care, they leave because caring has consumed them to the point of erasure. To remain would mean losing themselves entirely. 6. No return. Why empaths rarely go back. Once an empath leaves, they seldom return. This is because departure is not just physical but psychological. The empath sees the truth of the dynamic, the projections, the shadow entanglements, the imbalance. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. Jung emphasized that individuation is a forward movement, a process that deepens self-awareness and cannot be reversed. Returning to environments that once drained them would mean regressing, denying the growth that their departure initiated. The empath intuitively knows that to return is to betray their own psyche. Moreover, leaving often severs the psychic contract. Before departure, the empath unconsciously agreed to carry others' shadows. By leaving, they withdraw from that role. If they return, they risk being pulled back into the same destructive dynamic. Thus, no return is not cruelty but protection. It is a commitment to individuation, to moving toward wholeness instead of back into fragmentation. 7. The cost of leaving. Leaving without warning carries heavy costs. Friends, partners, or family members left behind often feel abandoned, confused, or angry. To them, the empath's disappearance looks cold or heartless. This misunderstanding isolates empaths further, making them feel guilty for prioritizing their survival. Inside, empaths struggle with their own conflicts. Many carry guilt for leaving, even when staying would have destroyed them. They wonder if they could have explained better, endured longer, or healed more. Yet Jung reminds us that individuation often isolates the individual from the collective. To grow into one's wholeness, one must risk misunderstanding and even alienation. In the long run, the cost of leaving is outweighed by the cost of staying. By disappearing, the empath preserves their integrity, even at the expense of being misunderstood. Jung would argue that this sacrifice is necessary. No true individuation occurs without loss. 8. Healing and integration. While leaving protects the empath, it does not resolve the underlying pattern. Healing requires integration. Jung emphasized shadow work, confronting what has been repressed, denied, or projected. For empaths, this means learning to distinguish what belongs to them and what belongs to others. One key step is boundary setting. Boundaries are not walls but conscious choices about what to carry and what to release. For empaths, boundaries are acts of individuation. They signal that the self is no longer an open container for everyone's unconscious material. Boundaries honor the empath's wholeness and prevent future collapse. Healing also means embracing the full psyche. Jung taught that wholeness requires integrating both light and dark. Empaths must accept that they cannot save everyone, that others must face their own shadows. By releasing the compulsion to fix, empaths reclaim their energy for their own individuation. In this way, they transform from unconscious absorbers into conscious healers. 9. Modern implications. In today's world, the empath's challenges are magnified. Constant exposure to media, social networks, and collective crises bombards them with emotional stimuli. The line between personal and collective has blurred, making empaths more susceptible to burnout than ever. Compassion fatigue, a condition recognized in modern psychology, mirrors Jung's warning about psychic overload. The empath's nervous system, constantly absorbing suffering, reaches collapse. Without conscious boundaries, the empath risks depression, anxiety, or chronic exhaustion. This is why Jung's psychology remains relevant. His insights into the unconscious, shadow, and individuation provide tools for navigating the empath's experience. They remind us that leaving without warning is not pathology but survival, and that no return is not rejection but individuation. In a culture that often demands constant availability, Jung validates the empath's need to retreat, preserve, and heal. Conclusion. Empaths leave without warning because their psyche demands it. Saturated by projections, overwhelmed by shadow dynamics, and pushed to their breaking point, they withdraw abruptly to survive. And once they leave, they rarely return because individuation demands forward growth, not regression into old wounds. Through Jung's psychology, we see this not as weakness but as archetypal necessity. The empath embodies the wounded healer and the wanderer, figures who must sometimes disappear to preserve their wholeness. Their departure may confuse or hurt others, but it aligns with a deeper psychic truth: to stay would be to die inwardly, while to leave is to live. In the end, understanding empaths through Jung's lens allows us to shift our perspective. Instead of condemning their silence or sudden absence, we can see the deeper process at work. Empaths are not cold, they are carrying more than most can imagine. Their leaving is not abandonment but individuation, a step toward becoming who they truly are. And sometimes, the bravest thing an empath can do is walk away and never look back.